With the Nate Diaz vs. Khamzat Chimaev fight looming in the not-too-distant future, plenty of people have voiced their displeasure given the perceived talent difference between the two. However, Nate Diaz knows his way around an octagon better than most, and in the build-up to the fight, Khamzat has spoken out. Today, we are discussing Khamzat's thoughts on Diaz, while claiming he just fights for fun. Stay where you are. Let's jump straight in then. What has Chimaev been saying? The fight between the pair will be the last time we will see Nate Diaz in the UFC octagon. Barring some contractual miracle, and given what he has done for the sport, some have suggested he should have been given an easier fight to bow out on, a la Donald Cerrone. Diaz, of course, has the ability to shock the world in what would almost be certainly one of the biggest upsets ever seen in the UFC octagon, but Khamzat doesn't see anything other than a dominant win from his point of view. Speaking about the upcoming fight recently, Borz said, "Actually, I don't need to fight Diaz, but I fight that guy just for fun." And he's probably right. After defeating Gilbert Burns, he shot up the rankings to number 3, and at this point in time, Diaz isn't even ranked. Chimaev then went into reminiscing mode, saying, "I was like a kid when he was fighting. I could wait for the title. I'm just waiting. I'm in top 3 and just have to wait, but I took that fight. That guy's not top, but he's famous. Everyone loves him. Everyone talks about this gangster. That shit. I eat the gangster for the breakfast. Gonna F that guy up." One half of the recently formed Smash Bros with Darren Till, Khamzat is making waves in the welterweight division right now, and will probably be in line for a title shot with a win over the younger Diaz brother. Next up, Jorge Masvidal has given his thoughts on the matchup. Stay tuned. Of course, Masvidal actually fought Diaz a couple of years ago in the first and only BMF title matchup, so has first-hand experience of being there with Nate. Diaz also has a history of spoiling the party, having beaten Conor McGregor to derail that particular hype train back in 2016. And Jorge actually thinks that Diaz has more of a chance than many people believe he has, saying recently, "I don't really think Khamzat is as good as they say he is." Chimaev was supposed to blitz through Gilbert Burns, but he made difficult work of that one, nearly getting knocked out in the process. However, he recovered to win the fight on points. Masvidal went on to explain how he is not yet a believer in Khamzat and suggested that the UFC have messed up, as they probably wanted to pair Diaz with someone stylistically before saying, "That's not the best when I think of effing Khamzat." So they gave him a boring-ass wrestler who is going to try and hug his legs and sniff his crotch. Jorge also claimed that many people believe Gilbert Burns actually won the fight, before suggesting that Nate could actually knock Chimaev out in the latter rounds due to his world-famous gas tank. He also derided Khamzat for wasting his energy doing stupid expletive and went on to say, "I think Khamzat should win, but I won't be surprised if Nate stops his ass." What do you guys think? A former Chimaev opponent has also backed Nate. Next, stick around. Jingliang was dismantled by Khamzat Chimaev back in October of last year, losing a first-round submission by way of rear naked choke, but the Chinese fighter believes Nate Diaz can figure out a way to beat one of the UFC's most feared fighters right now. As we just saw a couple of weeks back at UFC 278, anything can happen in this sport, which is something Lee was quick to point out by saying, "I can't give you a number about the chance Diaz will win, but we all know, based on the statistics and the data, Khamzat is the favorite and Nate is the underdog." However, he went on to echo Masvidal's sentiments that he has never fought a 5-round fight. He also pointed out that Nate is an anomaly in the fight game, and in those 4th and 5th rounds, Diaz can drag you into deep waters, before saying, "What we really need is a miracle, is a surprise in the fight, and I believe Nate Diaz is the guy that can give you this." Of course, he nearly did that exact thing in his last fight with Leon Edwards, rocking the newly crowned champ in the 5th, but just failing to finish him. Lee goes up against former lightweight challenger Tony Ferguson on the same card as Nate and Khamzat, and will be hoping that this is the beginning of a run after his huge TKO last time out. Yet another UFC fighter backing Nate now. Don't go anywhere. Vicente Luque has lost his last 2 in the UFC's welterweight division, and as such has slid down to number 10 in the rankings. But the 7-year UFC veteran is handily placed to talk about the fights at the top of the division, given some of the heavy hitters he has taken out over the years. Tyron Woodley, anyone? The silent assassin has also recently thrown his backing behind Nate Diaz, suggesting he has the tools in his arsenal to surprise everybody. Of course, Chimaev is the heavy favorite, but Luque isn't completely writing Diaz off, saying earlier this week, "Because of Chimaev's hype, I do think the UFC wants him to fight for the belt if he beats Nate." However, the New Jersey fighter, who at one point was on his own 6-fight win streak in the UFC's welterweight division, also said that Khamzat is the favorite because of the hype behind him and how the UFC is building him up, before saying, "It's a fight that might get complicated for him if it goes to the 2nd, 3rd round and so on. If Chimaev gets tired, Nate might pick up the pace and surprise everybody." Many people are hoping for a shock win, not only for Diaz and everything he has given to the sport, but to derail the Khamzat hype train, with many claiming a fighter who is supposed to be as good as he is doesn't throw the stupid, energy-sapping shots we saw from him against Burns. Where do you guys stand on this one? DC has had his say on how last week's fight impacts Khamzat. Stay with us. As Leon Edwards wheeled away in celebration after last week's incredible knockout over Kamaru Usman, there was one man thousands thousands of miles away in the Swedish capital Stockholm who might not have been particularly thrilled. Khamzat Chimaev was thought to be next in line for a shot at welterweight gold had Kamaru Usman, the overwhelming favorite, retained his title, but it wasn't to be, and earlier this week, former UFC champ Daniel Cormier has labeled Khamzat the biggest loser from the evening's proceedings, and it's easy to see why. On his YouTube channel shortly after the fight, Cormier seemed sympathetic towards Borz, saying, "I think last weekend he did not understand that he was the biggest loser in the Usman versus Leon situation because he was in line." Cormier went on to explain how before the title fight, all he had to do was get past Diaz, which seemed relatively simple at the time, but then Leon Edwards happened. The former light heavy and heavyweight champ went on to ask what exactly the Diaz fight is for now, suggesting that it's just for the Stockton man's legacy, before saying, "I feel like for Chimaev, this is just another scalp on his resume, because I don't know if this win necessarily puts him closer than he already is to a championship fight. However, it possibly paves the way for a showdown with Colby. Exciting." And finally, bad news for Khamzat's fellow Smesh bro. Stay tuned. Darren Till has been spending a lot of time in Sweden of late in a bid to get his own middleweight career back on track. The popular Liverpool fighter, who has unfortunately lost 4 of his last 5, has been training alongside Chimaev, undoubtedly picking up some invaluable tips from Khamzat and others, such as Alexander Gustafsson. However, it hasn't all gone smoothly for the gorilla, as it was revealed this week that earlier this summer, he was arrested on drink driving charges. One prominent Swedish newspaper broke the story, saying Till was arrested on July 31st as he was driving at high speed whilst intoxicated. I mean, you can't really defend that behavior, however popular he might be. Till was forced to leave his native Liverpool as a teenager after being stabbed at a house party, being sent to train in Brazil by his head coach at Team Cowbon, Colin Heron. It seems he is still unfortunately acting like a teenager. What do you guys make of Till's career so far? As usual, thanks for dropping in on us today, and remember to swing by again next time when we will be discussing all sorts of other cool bits and pieces. And why not do us a big favor by liking today's video, whilst also sharing it with any MMA heads you might know of. Bye guys!